Last week I came down with a pretty nasty cold, which eventually wound up giving me laryngitis, so I wasn't able to do any live streaming building the tower. But I still wanted to work on it, so I did keep working on it, got some footage, and decided to go ahead and put it together and put it up on YouTube just to kind of show you what I did as I went along and where I wound up at. So what I'm doing here is just putting some blocks together, working on this next section. As I've mentioned in other live streams, I like to work on things when building stuff like this in sections. It's a lot easier to paint instead of trying to paint it when it's all one great big structure. Here I'm just continuing to build up levels. These are some blocks I had glued together previously, and so I knew how they're going to fit in. Just wanted to build up and see how many layers, how high I wanted to go with the tower. I get to this point and I figure, it's pretty tall. I think that's going to be good enough. Once I put a top on it, it'll be plenty tall. Here I'm laying out the pieces for the third section. I'll glue them together like this, and then I'll glue all three sections of these smaller sections into the larger third section. As I'm working on getting this put together, I know I'm going to basically seal this off. I thought about doing a scene down below through the open doorway, but what I need to do for that, I don't have the materials for, at least not yet, or the know-how and the skills to pull it off. One of the viewers on the live stream gave me the idea for it, and I really appreciate them doing that. I can't put it together right now. What I am doing is I'm noticing that once I have this put together, I'm going to have a whole bunch of empty space inside here. So it gives me the idea to turn this into like a kind of storage container, like a little hideaway kind of thing. Granted, you can't put much in there, but you could put, a few things, maybe some sort of like secret compartment. So I'm laying out the blocks. The blocks with the X will be glued to the third section, while the others will be glued to the top section, essentially the lid. And here I'm just taking the blocks off so I can glue them. Again, turning them over to make sure that they're going to be flat on top, and then I can sand down the smooth sides, the undersides of them. And of course, using my Duplo blocks to make sure that they're nice and square. What I'm doing here is trying to figure out how big exactly I need the lid to be. I thought about maybe extending it slightly over the edge, maybe a little bit larger, but then I decided ultimately I want it to be the same size as the tower. So I'm going to mark it out here. Now I'm laying out some different tiles, trying some different stuff to see what looks right and what's going to fit, different sizes. Some 1-inch blocks, some 1/2-inch blocks, some 3/4-inch blocks, just to see what will fit on top and what looks good, at least to me. I finally decided on this style, so I swap out these 3/4-inch blocks and put in an 1.5-inch tile, and then I'll have a stripe down the middle, and then the pedestal will sit in the center. I'm going to put the pedestal on a raised dais in the center just to kind of break up the smoothness of it, just to raise it up a little bit. And now it's time to start gluing all these tiles together, again using the upside down formation just to make sure that the top is nice and even. Here I've got the pieces kind of put together, get an idea of what it's going to look like all assembled. And then I'm checking out the scale of this Weeping Angel for the top, and I realize it's a little on the small side. So I'm going to 3D print a little bit larger version for that. Now I'm going to glue these blocks into place, the ones with the X's on them. That will be glued to the third section, and then the other pieces will be glued to the lid and removed, so that way it actually will come apart. And then I'll have my little storage space inside the tower. I checked the underside of the lid and realized it's kind of rough, so I'm going to sand it down, smooth it out a little bit. Granted, it's on the underside and nobody's really going to see it, but to me, I want it to be nice and smooth. And instead of cleaning up the plaster dust by using air and blowing the dust everywhere, I'm vacuuming it up. And then I'm sanding down the dais as well, so it'll sit nice and flat and even. Once I have the dais glued onto the lid, onto the top, I'm just measuring it to make sure that it's nice and even. It's not like anybody's really going to notice that, but I will. I'll know. And now I'm going to glue the top, that lid piece, to these blocks, except for the ones with the marked with the X's. So that way it will help keep the lid from sliding around if somebody happens to grab it or touch it. I'm just checking the fit of the lid, quote unquote lid, on the top of the tower just to make sure that it looks right. It looks good, so I think it's time to start painting. This is my dark gray mixture. I got it from the Hearst Arts website. It's 3 parts black, 1 part white, and 2 parts water. The water helps thin it down, so that way it gets way down into the cracks and crevices of the blocks. Helps hide all of the white plaster that can show through sometimes. Now that the first coat of paint is on, I'm going to take these 4 blocks and glue them into the very bottom section. I don't want the whole tower to be storage, just the top, like 2/3 of it. So I'm going to use these blocks to create a kind of support on this bottom section, and I'll put a floor on top of it, which will help keep anything from falling through. I'm drilling holes because I'm going to pin these into the bottom section for extra support and strength. Once the glue on the pins have dried and they're ready to be installed, I'm using this square to make sure they line up with the top. In hindsight, I didn't really need to do that. I'm not really sure what I was thinking, that I needed it to be flush with the top of this bottom section. I could have put it down a little bit further. I think mostly I just wanted to make sure that it was going to be even all the way around, so that the bottom of that storage space wouldn't be slanted or anything like that. I'm using clamps to hold the blocks in place just to make sure that they're nice and tight against the sides. That way they're not going to fall loose or anything like that, especially since I'm trying to glue all 4 into place at once. I don't want them to fall out while it's upside down like that. Here I'm making the floor of the storage compartment out of black foam core. I could have used any number of things, balsa wood or whatever. It's just what I happen to have handy. After cutting it down, I'm just checking to make sure that it's going to fit within that space and that I don't need to do any more trimming it down. It looks good, so I'm going to run with it. I printed out some more Weeping Angels, some of the bigger ones and some of the smaller ones. So now I'm going to prime them with some of this primer for the airbrush, and then I'll work on painting them. And in case you're wondering, yes, I am wearing a mask, and I do have an exhaust fan running while I'm using the airbrush, just to help keep the particles from flying all over the place or getting into my lungs or anything like that. Now I'm going to start brushing on some highlights using this medium gray. It's 2 parts white and 1 part black paint. I'm going to use some of this water-based polyacrylic to coat the top where the lid will sit on it, just to help protect the paint and the blocks from any damage of taking the lid off and on, off and on. Now I'm going to apply some final highlights, dry brushing them on. This is white paint with just a couple drops of black, just to kind of dull it down. And I'm using very, very light brush strokes on it to really get the bricks to pop out. Here I'm applying another coat of the polyacrylic to the underside of the lid to protect these blocks as well. So the tower is pretty much done. I still need to assemble it completely in the floor divider so that this becomes a storage space. Oops. Still need to paint the door. I'll do that, put that in. I'm not going to assemble this until I actually have the door painted and put in place. Need to base it on that. some terrain, dirt, things like that. The weeping angels for the alcoves need to go in there on each side. And then of course on the top, the big weeping angel, you need to paint the pedestal, paint this bigger weeping angel, and then it will be done. I will start doing that on the live stream. My voice is back. I should be able to go back to streaming and everything. So I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this between the streams video and following along with it as I worked on this while I was recovering from my cold. But I think made some really good progress with it. I think it looks pretty good. Kind of plain. I could have done a few more decorative items. I could have put some more alcoves, maybe up in here or here on the back. Again, I was making this up as I went along. I started out with just a general idea of I wanted a kind of tower. Maybe I could have put some of the smaller blocks up on the top here as the crenellations. A lot of things I could have done, should have done, but I will keep in mind the next time I build one of these, I'll have a much better idea of what I want to do as far as a little bookshelf tower. So again, thank you for watching the video and following along and for stopping by, and hopefully I'll see you on live streams. Until then, be well, my friends.